Welcome to the Art of Rock. It is Saturday morning. Oh my God. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Tongva people as being the traditional landowners of where I am, which is Hollywood, California. This is the Art of Rock, and we're helping you make your music happen. We're helping you make your art happen. We talk about production, composition, and writer's block. And with everything going on in your life and in the world, it's just a great place to forget about everything for 2 hours and talk about music and the creation of music. Here's Rob. Join us every bloody Saturday here on Angelspit's Twitch. And suddenly gear stopped working. Come on. Oh my God, really? Angelspit's fucking Twitch. I'm gonna punch my computer. I swear I'm gonna punch my fucking computer. I'm not putting stuff in the comments. I'm just gonna talk. Angelspit's Twitch. Or Angelspit's YouTube. Like and subscribe, all that bullshit. This is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. It keeps me going. $3 a month or free. Most of this stuff is on there for free. Ice Planet 9000's new album is there. Go get it. Thanks for reading the t-shirt, Brett. And Alex, I sent you a t-shirt, by the way. It's there. Patreon supporters get a free copy, and indeed get a free copy of all the mad crap I do. On Wednesday nights, Vulture Culture. D, it's good to see your face. Does a deep dive into synthesizers. I'm wearing the t-shirt. Go buy the t-shirt. Help Alex out. Alex brought up something really interesting pertaining to today's conversation, but we'll get to that in a minute. Non-stop music from the bleeding edges, MTV TV, and there's heaps of awesome, amazing stuff on it. Go get some. I guarantee you'll bloody love it. And if you want to get involved, remember to email them. Rezi, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having a show to join.
And you keep everything going while the manic craziness is doing its manic craziness. Okay, so I feel like what the fuck?
I feel that way too, just so you know.
Why isn't this? Hold on now. Now I'm trying to get this bullshit working. So today's conversation is really interesting. Will you please work? I swear. Um, yeah, great. Let's go. Hurry, hurry. Let's go. We're talking about Behringer today. We're talking about the B word. And the objective of today's exercise, it's not about hating, it's not about bashing, it's going, hey guys, let's take a look at this, let's have a conversation about this. Thank you very much. It's yeah, we're going to ask a whole bunch of different questions and about personal experiences and the whole lot. So I want to kick the ball off rolling is what has your personal experience been? Oh, happy birthday, Adam Bomb. What's your personal experience been with Behringer? Synths, mixers, whatever. Your personal experience, the floor is open, go.
I can jump in. Or Brett, because Brett said something. Do you want to jump in first, Brett?
Sure, man. I can make it pretty quick. Um, my experience with it really comes out of the mixer world. You know, when I was first starting out, I just had my 4-track, and that was my mixer. I needed something that could expand the studio and replace the mixing on the 4-track, if you will. So that's where Behringer and Mackie came into play. That'd be how I initially got there. And then, of course, today, I still like their mixing platforms, the XR18.
Gotcha. I'm going to overlap a little bit with that, as you might know. My history of buying stuff from them, I started out with a couple of pretty nicely made DIs, stereo DIs. They had some good features and they were exactly what I needed at the time, and they were very inexpensive, and they're still working to this day. They're battery operated, phantom power, linked or split for the stereo pair built into one box. A lot of cool features. And I don't know, like that immediately makes you think, where'd they rip off the design from? Because this is like, 2000 or so, 2005, that era, when all Behringer was known for is violating trade dress and, copying maybe still made or outdated gear. Never figured it out. Don't know where it was. This might have been actually one of the original things of theirs that was interesting. The second thing I got was a multi-channel interface. I don't know which one it is. It's not here right now. Somebody else is using it. But that was actually subpar. Not a great piece of gear. Cheap knobs, great feature set, pretty good case, terrible noise floor. I don't have any other audio interfaces where like I have issues with the amount of noise that the thing has. But this one actually, you know, maybe it was a bad product run. Maybe their QA was a little bit low, but that just made me think, maybe they are kind of crummy. And then I needed a solution for getting rid of my large format, medium format console. I had a Mackie 32.8, and the next best thing as far as amazing number of features, amazing complex topology built into a single 3 rack space unit was the XR18. And that's a lot of mic pre's, a lot of internal patching. Don't care too much about the effects, but the bussing and internals, pretty good sounding. Mic pre's not as like perfectly uniformly matching level wise. Like there are a couple of dBs off here and there, even if you've got the faders at 0 for the trim. So it's quality control, not what a expensive mixer was, but the thing was like $800 for this. It's amazing. Like, how do you refuse? This is the only option that does that at the time. I still use it. It's a good tool. The software still looks like it was made in like 97, but I, you know, supplanted it with my own like UI stuff, and I don't have to look at it, and I'm pretty happy with that. I have had to have it completely repaired once. Don't remember which part died, but reliability, nah. But compared to like my Mackie thing, that was riddled with problems also. Power supplies, ribbon cables. It's not easy to get a cheap people kind of, you know, inexpensive set of tools assembled and have them also be extremely high quality. But from my understanding, you need a competent tech to run your studio, no matter how many tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars you are spending. So that is a sliding scale. I think those are the main classes of things that I've gotten from them. There's also a knobby thing that's on my desk right now of theirs. And what this one reminds me of is I don't feel like there's one company there to talk about when you look at these things. There's no house style. There's no single class of kind of stuff that they make. And we're talking about a long period of time. So with that said, yeah, I've got some investment and some long-term experience with the gear itself. And if anybody else like has specific comments or questions about those particular things to clarify what I was talking about, I'd be interested in elaborating on what they are as I look around for other sneaky Behringer gear. But that's that for now.
Thank you very much. Alex, talk to me.
So here's my short history with Behringer. The first thing I ever got was a MIDI keyboard, which was just me going to the store with my parents and me asking for a keyboard, MIDI keyboard, and this was the one they had. It's the only piece of music equipment I actually hated because it has glaring issues with stuck keys and notes that just wouldn't go through, and it was a real piece of crap. After that, our band got an old Euro rack mixing desk, which worked perfectly. I really liked the sound. It was cold and analytic, which I quite liked. It had more gain than my Presonus that I have currently. And it held up very well considering it was in a moist basement for several years. So that's like a real, that one is a real good piece of gear. After that, it was just one ground isolation box. And I currently have a little digital mixing desk, which also works very well, except that you somehow can't, at least I couldn't update it from macOS. You had to install Windows and then update the firmware, which is really annoying because I had to borrow a friend's PC just to update my mixing desk, but hey. Yeah, and I'm not comfortable with how they conduct their business, but I don't blame anyone for
But we
using
will
their
get to
stuff.
that. Put a
Yeah.
pin in that one because we're going to swing back to the ethics shortly. Thank you. Vince, welcome back. It's good to see your face. What's your Behringer story?
All right. I've had a couple of Behringer things. I actually still have a couple of things. I had a mixer. It was an 8-channel 2XLR, and like technically 6, but it's more like 3 stereo. So it was more like 5 channels, depending on how you used it. Mixer, and that was good. But again, as Raz said, the noise floor on it was terrible. That was an issue I had with that too. Um, it was it was a little bit of a workaround. I could use it, but it wasn't what I wanted to have for a starting point of a recording when I got input done with it. So I traded that out and eventually just got an M audio interface, just 2-channel audio interface, so because I don't ever need 4 or 5 inputs at a time. Really, like I'm working by myself. I put everything one piece at a time into the software, so it's not like it was something I needed anyway. So I sold it, and I've got a couple of guitar pedals. One of them I actually gave to my son after I got the op amp muff from you, Karl. I got that, and then I was like, well, this is a little bit of an upgrade from the Behringer fuzz pedal. And I gave that to my son, and I'm actually disappointed I lost that one because it has a feature the op amp doesn't have. It's got a third setting for a clean boost. So now I've got to either buy another pedal to replace it to have a clean boost, or rig one of the pedals I have to act kind of like a clean boost. And that's kind of disappointing. But and I've got a noise reducer and a chorus and a sustainer compressor also. And all their pedals are great, but that is because they're based on Boss pedals. They're just a copied circuit from that. And I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad product, but it's nothing you can't get somewhere else. But it's also nothing you can't get somewhere else at a higher price. So it was definitely well worth the money I spent. Not necessarily the ideal piece of equipment. Um, but yeah, I haven't had any problem with their stuff. I've been considering a synth from them, but the reviews are so mixed that I'm not sure I want to even spend the $100 on something that I may regret paying for later.
And that's
So I'm not sure on future purchases, but I like what I have.
Thank you. Rob, I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to shoot my mouth off. And thank you,
Yeah,
Vince.
I had to do you hear me okay? Yep. I had to count up. I've got 7 bits of gear. And they're all kind of low price point for the most part. So they serve their purpose in terms of value for money. The studio gear that I have includes one of those little tiny mixers, like a 6-channel or whatever it is. And that's just handy. I moved on to a small Mackie, one of the Onyx series, instead of that particular mixer. So I don't use that mixer anymore, and I probably should sell it. I do have the Ultra DI Pro, which is like an 8-channel DI 19-inch rack, and that's actually a lot. I use that to go between modular and synths and pedals and stuff. I've got the Multicom Pro XL compressor, which is the set of 4 compressors and gates, and it's pretty good. I'm happy with that. For the price you pay for it, it's actually pretty good value. I do have their PSU for their modular rack, which all my Dope stuff is in. It's a CP1A PSU. and that's got voltage limiting and current limiting. So it's good protection circuitry in there for my Doepfer modules. I'm actually very happy with that. It's a good quality product. It's obviously the chassis that all my modular stuff goes into, but it's pretty good. I do have the FCB 1010 MIDI pedal, and that, yeah, I know Razie's got that too. It's actually
Forgot
pretty
about
good.
that one.
Yeah, I mean it's old, and I guess I wouldn't be surprised if it's Boss equipment, Vince, because of its heritage back in the day. For selecting, yeah, that's the baby. I've got one of those, so they're actually pretty good, quite functional, and they're
And
they're
quite
quite
massive.
inexpensive. Yeah, yeah, you could use one as a self-defense weapon if need be, or plate armor on your chest in a riot. But in any case, the synths that I have, which I bought fairly early on, one was the Model D and one was the Neutron. And those are, the Model D is analog, and it's a rip-off, obviously. And the sound quality is pretty good. For what they made for that unit, I was pretty impressed. The Neutron had a lot of versatility, and the Neutron is essentially their product. So it's not like they copied somebody else's. And I really like the versatility of the patch bays on the Neutron. It's actually quite cool. But to be honest, in a more recent purchase, this is going back a couple of years, I did consider whether to get the Korg ARP Odyssey or the BARP instead of the CARP. And there was a lot of really good reviews about the Behringer one, and they had selectable filters and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I just could not convince myself to go with not go with Korg, because Korg and ARP are kind of intertwined now. So, and I'm really pleased with my decision on buying the Korg, even though it was a little bit higher in price. I feel confident that I made the right decision. And I'm sure others have had good experiences with their version of it. But to be honest, I would rather pay homage to the people who own the rights to that core hardware. But yeah, that's my story.
And thank you very much. Okay. Reel me in if I get carried away. I started out with one of those DI things. It's still working. This is 25 years ago. I toured it with angelspit, and it was in the rig for every single show. And it was thrown on planes, on trucks, and everything in that rig box, and it's still going. I think maybe it's that 8 DI thing. Great machine. That whole Euro thing they were doing back then, great. I think one or two of them might be fucked now. I'm not sure. But I just got in there with a bit of it's fine. The noise floor has always been an issue. I've had more Behringer mixers, the little Eurorack Xerxes or whatever they're called, than I can count. Once again, also, noise has been a tiny bit of an issue. Also, scratchy knobs, but fixes that pretty quick. I got a Model D just because I've always wanted a Mini Moog, and initially it sounded amazing. But the really interesting thing about it is that you're working on a track, and then whether it actually ends up on the track or something else ends up on the track, that's the real test. If you go, no, I'm actually going to use this over here or Doepfer gear or whatever. And I think I had it for like 3 years, maybe longer. It ended up on one track. And it was the basis for so much stuff, yet it only ended up on one set. And the thing sounds like a Mini Moog, but there's something about it that lacked the authority of a Mini Moog. I now own quite a bit. Well, I've got the X18 mixer thing that I got for Ice Planet 9000 Live. I think it's very, very good. Some of the couple of the knobs are a little bit wiggly, but that's fine. I actually did a gig the other night for the roller derby, and they had the Behringer Wing, and it was beaten up, and a bunch of the knobs didn't work, but it was a mixing desk in a roller derby environment. but I've worked on the Midas equivalent of that desk, and it's rock fucking solid. Um, I got one of their the most expensive modular thing they have, which is the frequency shifter, the Bode, and it was DOA, dead on arrival. And my guy, my Sweetwater guy, he's always saying, consider Behringer. I've got two of their sequences. I sent one, I sold one just for reasons. It was the mode version. I think I just sold it because of rack space. But I've got the really interesting thing is I got two oscillators, like the Roland style modular oscillators, and they are really solid. They're really solid. In fact, they're more pitch solid than quite a bit of my very sought after name brand stuff, which is very interesting. And I don't want to get too bogged down. Well, we'll get bogged down in this later, but they're doing some interesting things with the modulars. I will pass on also, I spoke to Alex at Vultureculture about this, and Alex was saying how his experience and the experience of his community has been, since people have had bought Behringer as introduction stuff, and I hope I'm paraphrasing correctly here, some of the experience has been really bad. And his concern was it might be turning people off synthesis or modular synth because our first synth I got was a piece of shit and it broke and it didn't last, That's going to get into build quality, which we're going to talk about shortly. Their support, Behringer's support, is absolutely useless. Oh yeah, I got one of their Phonica or whatever it's called, because I couldn't afford a fucking Scarlett. And the thing I've learned is that if you buy Behringer because you can't afford X, you're going to end up with X anyway. So I got the thing instead of the Scarlett, and it was fucking horrible. It was putting glitches and pops and squeaks in, and I was running Cubase on a PC, and then I looked at the reviews and people are going, yeah, it's awful on PCs. It works on Macs because some of the places I work at use them on a Mac, and that's great. And I tried to talk to product support, and it was absolutely a nightmare. It was horrible. And Reverb is absolutely flooded with Behringer. So if anybody else wants to talk about their personal experience, or we could move, and thanks for all these comments, by the way, or we could move along to ethics. Rezi, did you want to talk more about your personal experience?
Yeah, that spans that actually. I don't know if it quite moves into ethics, but the experience side of it is like partly how it's made. Like that's design. Like how you feel using the thing is certainly part of the company spirit in some way. And that's the thing that I was kind of touching on, that there's no unity among the things. Like that foot pedal that I held up a minute ago is a lot of rolled steel. Like it's a chassis that you could use as a wedge or tool or weapon. And it's, the plastic parts will break, but the metal is huge. And on the other hand, it's I'm gonna veering off from my actual experience if I start speculating, but the mixer definitely broke. The foot pedal definitely hasn't broken, and the control surfaces have been somewhat reliable, but that weird space between how it feels to use and how the obvious geniuses that did the innards of some of these things weren't working on these other projects. Like there's just this gap. So I think they have some interesting silos in the company, or time carries on and they have like a churn of talent in there. But these things, once they're released, don't expect them to improve on the software side. My disdain for most of the stuff that shipped with the XR18's Mac software stayed through most of the revisions, and it's stabilized to nothing else is coming out. So that's one I replaced with my own interface, which is to say they imbued it with the smarts of speaking enough languages to write your own interface for. Genius inside. Ooh, something happened on the user interface. And similar with the little knobby thing is, I got it because, wow, that's a great price for a thing with knobs, endless encoders, and light up feedback, touch LED things. I can use that as a platform to write my own little interactive thing that I'm working on for Ableton. Not their software. The floor pedal thing, not running their firmware in it. That's a replacement chip that a couple of different companies offered to totally gut the limited and not improving as the times change over the decades internal software on the thing. So FBC Uno, I think, is the product there. So every one of these things has this weird gap of, yeah, there's some great stuff about it, but here's the compromises. And it is congruent, Karl, with what you said about the support being there isn't any. And definitely if you're interested in maybe taking it apart, maybe once it breaks, you'll do something else with it. Maybe you're buying it to write your own test bed stuff. Strengths there. Reliability for gigs? Maybe not. Or in a commercial studio, buy 3, get 1 that works.
Thank you very much. Ivan, I see your hand. I'm going to throw it to you. This is based on personal experience. Don't go into rabbit holes of ethics and all this other shit, because we're going to get to that, baby. Ivan, what's on your mind? And thank you, Rezi.
Yeah, I actually own a surprising number of Behringer parts. My Eurorack's got a bunch of the gray modules, and like they do the thing that they're supposed to do. I'm happy with them. I have a Pro One and a Neutron, and I am very happy with both of them. The Pro One, mostly Pro Ones, sounds mostly like a Pro One. I mean, I can't say it's exact, but here's part of the problem. We can compare the modern, Behringer Pro One to a vintage Pro One, and now we're also comparing aged caps. So like it is not exactly an apples to apples comparison at that point, because one of the apples has been allowed to sit around and get a little aged. What else do I have? Oh yeah, the Ultra Gain connected to my audio interface gave me more ports for my audio interface, which I desperately needed at that time. And like the noise floor on it is not a problem. It behaves itself wonderfully. It's speaking through ADAT, and it just worked. I am perpetually happy with that thing. I also have their 2600 clone, which it R2D2s, and again, we're mostly comparing, that to aged, vintage versions with vintage caps, so that I can't really complain about it, and it does what it's advertised to do. I don't need the Model D because I have the Alita Soviet copy of Model D, and if you think it doesn't have authority, wait till it sends a secret police over. As it does a great job. It does such a great job that like buying a Model D doesn't even make sense to me at this point. All right, I am done.
Thank you so much. Rob, your hand is back up. What's on your mind? And thank you, Ivan.
I think from a business perspective, they kind of set themselves into a market niche where it's affordability.
Actually,
And
this is a good point. Can you put a pin in it? Because we're going to come around to this. So please write this down because I want to hear what you have to say.
Yep.
Was there anything else along the personal experience that you wanted to bring up?
No.
Fucking awesome. Thank you so much. Rezi, will you lead us in the concept of the ethical issues?
Yeah, I mean, I can at least frame it in the way that I think about it. There's an argument about cloning discontinued gear, but it's defensible. It's discontinued. Nobody can afford it. We've got that discussion to have, and I think we can probably bat that back and forth for a while. But the fact that I'm going to say this in public on record for something that hasn't been going on in the past 6 years or so. But Uli Behringer is kind of a douchebag and did offensive, indefensible, and publicly lousy, annoying, childish, maybe in some countries illegal and unethical stuff. Like he's an ass. Whether or not 3,500 people in Music Tribe share his opinions, or if just the adults in marketing got the better of him and Uli still feels this way about people and products and stuff, that's something to grapple with and think about every time you pull out the gear. But we're benefiting. We get the cheap stuff. We have these things. It's a tough thing to balance. And I think, well, maybe we can just leave it at that. If anybody else has any specifics, the past, I would say since I think about 2000, he has been muzzled or removed from the spotlight. No longer posting insulting cartoons of people, no longer trademarking people's personal names so that they won't release gear, no more chiming in with the Kanye West thing and the Peter Kern thing and the stuff that I think we probably know about, but maybe don't need to re-litigate. But the one guy problem is a specific thing, and that's kind of where it's an ethical gradient rather than just yep, they suck. I think there are companies that have crossed that line with their one guy who had nothing to really do with the stuff that they make, but said a lot of horrible things and did stuff that really harmed people. That's maybe the thing to grapple with and think about and weigh when you're buying it used and just gaining from it, or buying it new and benefiting the company. I don't know. I'm gonna stop there, and hopefully, Karl, you can jump in and tell me where how this fits into your view.
Well, actually, no, this is great because we want to talk about this. And actually, Rob, maybe this is where your thoughts about the business comes in perfectly. So if you want to dive in at this point and talk about the business model, do you think that this fits with what we're talking about?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you. What's yours?
So from a business perspective, and this is an area that I'm pretty familiar with. If you look at the positioning in the market, where the company wants to provide customer value and how it wants to price itself, and then you've got this upper range. So let's look at let's say the Kurzweil, the new Kurzweil, for example. You're in the thousands of dollars, right? Right down the bottom end, below $500, there's a lot of small gadgets, let's call them gadgets, synth gadgets that everyone tends to make. And that's kind of the gateway drug for getting into home studios and synthesis. If you look at where this company positions itself in the market, it's usually fundamentally in the budget and entry level segment, which makes up about 10 to 15% of the overall market. And the reason why that percentage is low is because whilst they might manufacture a lot of those low-cost units, they're not necessarily going to sell as much in total revenue as a high-end synth company, because those high-end synth companies do have a huge premium and a lot of customer support to pay for that. So if this company is manufacturing all out of a Asian country with low labor rates, they're probably employing fairly low paid engineers to design the equipment. And so I would say that the engineers don't have a lot of investment in the product lines. So when you talk about things having a short lifespan, the components not being very good quality, those are all trade-offs to stay in that bottom end of the market to make a profit and try to capture that part of the market. What does that mean for the consumers? Well, you guys are telling it that the products will deteriorate. They won't maintain any quality over time necessarily. And there's no support. So that's what you get when you pay that amount. You pay for what you get. Now, if you look at Moog, you could argue that the market size for Moog is the same as Behringer, but their positioning in the market is very different. So low quantity production rate of Moog, higher value premium product, less people buy it, versus something like what we would have called Radio Shack back in the day. So Radio Shack had a Moog, right? And they had a kit as well. So I'm thinking that the Behringer is only just above the Radio Shack level in terms of market positioning, and you're still subject to a questionable quality, but they try to make business sense on volume. So the more they can make, the broader their distribution network globally, then they're going to make money and people are going to be okay with their products. So that's choosing the market. Now, my question is what's happened between the Model D, which I thought was an okay product. It took a while to warm up, but it's analog. Now looking at DeepMind, what's changing in the market dynamic? Are they now trying to pursue like a $1,000 price point synthesizer market now? They're trying to extend themselves into that upper end. Are they going to go down the trail of designing more of their own synthesizer products? And what's the quality going to be like compared to their normal generation of products? I think that people will probably have a hard time paying more than $1,000 for one of their new synthesizers when they would prefer to use something that's a known brand like a Roland, Kurzweil, Yamaha, Korg. I think I would struggle with buying an expensive synthesizer from them because it doesn't match their traditional business model.
That's an amazing point. Thanks, Rob. I'll also say it's an interesting, if I've ever had problems with Doepfer, which has been very rare, I've talked to Dieter Doepfer himself. And a lot of people say that if you have a problem with Doepfer, Dieter will be the guy talking to you on your email. When I had a problem with my sequentials Rev 2, I was talking to a dude who built it. And that guy emailed me back within 12 hours. Same with Dieter. There's people who build synthesizers because they love synthesizers, as opposed to people who build synthesizers because they love money. Maybe that's what this is about. Who knows? Thank you, Rob. Alex, what are your thoughts on ethics in business?
First of all, I think Dieter is semi-retired or something, but I think someone else gladly will answer your emails if you write them. So the thing, I have no problem with them cloning 70s, 80s designs that haven't been touched by the company for some time, or even like if you do a minimal clone, I don't care. However, I care about them cloning more recent products, and I even more care about if they're cloning products by very small operations, which put them into jeopardy. So that's like one of the two things that I mostly dislike about them. And I also want to remind people, Behringer aren't the only company doing affordable music and synthesizer gear. For example, you can always pay used, which is like comes with a risk, but if you can show up in person, you usually have a decent chance that the thing actually works and you're not being ripped off.
And this is a good
further
point,
than-
Al. Sorry. Just quickly,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end of this, I do want to talk about alternatives, price point alternatives. So
I would continue with that if that's okay, or I can do
for
it
sure.
later. So I just looked up, and I think if you're just looking for affordable beginner gear, there are Sonicware products which supposedly are fairly decent. I haven't used one, but they make these little groove boxes, and if you're just starting out, I think a contained unit is really helpful. Also a bit more expensive, the circuit tracks which gives you two synthesizer engines. While you can't fully tweak them, you have an editor where you can then control them. And I think for the price, it's good whole value. It's more than 150 euros or dollars, but I think in value it surpasses that. And also, if you're looking Eurorack, Redbox has really affordable entry level modules. I think their oscillators and so are under 100 euro. I don't know how expensive it is in the States, but they are like also really good affordable entry gear.
Thank you so much. And we're going to deep dive into alternatives later in the conversation. Razi, did you want to talk more about the ethical issue and the business?
Yeah, you said something that made me think of this, and I forgot exactly what your detail was, but the two examples of contact with support about a broken thing that isn't working the right way, and the style of message that you get from a company that doesn't empower its. Oh, it was because you were saying Dieter Dipfer answered your email. I have a Kenton MIDI to CV conversion box that wasn't working, and emailed, it's not working. Total confidence from the person that answered. I know that they were an engineer on the project, and they were like, no, your power supply is wrong. You need a different power supply. I was like, nah, I switched it. Like, try the power supply. It was the power supply. I said, I admired your confidence. I think the forthright thing was great. Whereas with, my Behringer XR18 is dead, no power on. We don't service those. Here's a list of the places on our website where you can find North American support. And yeah, at a certain point, you can't answer everybody's message with a confident, we stand behind our gear and I know how it works kind of answer. But boy, does it feel good. And I will never forget that one, person at Kenton, UK that was really confident about the product. The product is not broken, my guy. He was telling me this can't be broken. It's definitely the power supply using. And he was right. And it was like that kind of memory of, I don't know what that is. It's not really an ethical issue, but it is definitely a business style and vibes and how you feel using the stuff forever. I mean, this was decade after I bought the thing that they were saying that. So I'll just leave it there. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. Rob, tell me what's on your mind.
It's a side topic, but the market share in general is more tending towards Roland. And I got my issues with Roland as well. It's about their outboard gear and the way they use VST, but that's another topic.
They have some really cheaper alternatives and good price point stuff, and we can bring that up towards the end when we're talking about that. So please make a note on that.
Lost your mic there, dude.
Yeah, you just muted yourself.
That's so
did anybody
quiet.
else want to talk about the ethics or the business, or can we move on to another subtopic within the Great Behringer Conversation?
I just want to wrap it up with the interesting, when your figurehead's a lout and you shut them up, does your company get absolved of the things that they did if you didn't formally issue like a really good, modern millennial approved apology, Gen Z approved apology?
Oh, and we've had that conversation here quite a few times. I don't think it matters, but that's as far as apologies don't matter.
Corporate apology being
no,
what is that even?
They don't matter. No, people want to see you burn. Your flesh keeps them warm as you crackle and scream. Anyway, I'd like to talk about the class ramifications of this. So thank you for everybody sharing that. That was really wonderful. I have thoughts about, because as people know, I don't like Behringer. In fact, I have a thing where I don't want to talk about it on the Art of Rock, and I don't want to talk about their products. But over the last few years, people have been going through a lot of financial hardships. People want to make music. It's your galactic universal right to make music. Corporate brand apology is a great name for a band, by the way. People want to make music. And I've looked at a lot of the things that I've said, and I've thought about this stuff, and I've come to the conclusion that I've been a bit of a bigot in that I've been saying, well, if you can't afford the make noise maths, then you shouldn't be getting an abacus, the Behringer abacus, which is a copy of the make noise maths, like letter for letter, which is actually the copy of something else, but kind of. And my thoughts on that have changed because I believe that people need to make music, and it is fundamental to your here's Frank. It is fundamental to your journey as a human, even if you cannot access even if you can't access the technology, or if you have to buy a cheap alternative. And so this is a question, I guess maybe this is just for me, to be questioning how there is a class system in music where, hey, someone's got a reissue or an original Moog, and they turn their nose up on someone who's got the Model D. How much of that is really, come on, guys, how much of that is class? Because if this person could afford a Moog Mini, they'd have a Moog Mini, but they can't afford it. That, by definition, is class. Oh, this music was made on Behringer. Oh, I'm turning my nose up on it because it wasn't made on a Buchla. Class. So maybe this is just something no one gives a shit about, but Raziel, I see your hand.
Yeah, I really want to say something like incisive and articulate here, but I something about the very start of industrial music is not bourgeois. It's workmanlike. It's taping contact mics to metal, at least mythically, even if not totally in fact. But it isn't a studio with a synclavier or synclavier. It is not, at least in the first wave, the basis of some of the music we're talking about, a Fairlight CMI. That was the provenance of like Thomas Dolby and Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel, and thank goodness, but took a couple of generations before some of our favorites had access to those same tools. And at least in some of the spirit of the very horizon of the music that we're talking about right now and that we love and make, I don't know if economics and class are as intertwined, but it was certainly the cheap gear. It was certainly leaning into the broken, affordable, the improvised, the noisy, the abused version of the complicated, expensive thing, trickled down to what you figure, someplace in Kreuzberg was on the street corner being banged on and recorded outside of a bar. With that said, Alex, do you want to jump in and have something to say about that?
Personally, I don't think, at least I've seen people snap the music made with it. I've only seen people snap the gear itself. And I think if you're good at sound design, you can make crappy home keyboard sound like the greatest thing ever. Yeah, I think I don't blame anyone who buys it. I don't think it's like you're a bad person if you buy it. I think they're a bad people for having bad business practices. So basically, that's my position.
I'm with you there. I think that's a good position to take. But before you get off the hook entirely, the idea tying that to class specifically, from a European viewpoint, does that resonate in any way with you? Like over here in America, we're trying to make it seem, because when I think of the birth of industrial, for whatever reason, I think of Berlin. Maybe it's just Blixa and a couple of friends. Does that go anywhere for you, Alex, as our elected representative?
Well, I think you have to look more for the UK, but Berlin, of course, had a very lively alternative scene. But the Angelspit themselves never called themselves industrial, and to this day say they're not, even though everybody thinks they are.
To be fair, they banged a lot more metal than most
Can I
people.
reel this in a little bit, please? Thanks.
Yeah.
I really appreciate this conversation. Alex, were you
Welcome
talking,
back.
or can I steamroll into
I can
this?
give you the at least, yes, of course. If you're lower class, you can't afford expensive gear. Though, if you are in the position that you don't have much money, don't consider the price of one individual item and think of how much this one piece of gear carries you. So, because sometimes, even though something is a bit more expensive, it will give you greater mileage. For example, if it has also a drum sequencer and such, you can get more out of your gear. And there's of course always software which you can pirate if you have to.
Well said. Back at you, Karl.
Thank you so much. And so when I'm talking class, I mean fundamentally, you can't afford it, which increasingly, as the world's progressing, more and more people cannot afford it, which goes into a bigger conversation that we're not having today. And that's also ties in that I think the ethics are very important, and I think the business practices are very important, but increasingly, it's difficult for people to make a financial decision to support that or not to support that, because they can't afford that moral thing. It's either go with the morals and don't buy gear, or fuck it, I'm buying the gear, and that's out of my hands, and I have my own personal thoughts about that, which increasingly I am trying to become more humble and realistic about, and thinking more about the society. And I should really stress, when I talk about the class ramifications, I really am talking about me, because I'm a bit of a snob. I am. And that is something that I'm looking at within myself, trying to go, I'm going to stop being a snob. I'm going to I just want you to make your fucking music. I'm going to shut up now, and I thank everybody for your input. Rob, I see your hand.
Yeah, I don't think it's class at all. And the reason for that is because 99% of the gear that I've had since I was a poor bastard to becoming more proficient at my career, it's all secondhand. I've bought very few pieces of equipment brand new because I'm a tight bastard. And so if you're a capitalist bastard, then you would probably love the company because they've got a really good business model and it works out well for them. Is it the quality and price point that everyone needs? Maybe not. Maybe the quality's not there for people who have a lot more connection with Roland and Moog and higher end companies, but the price point's certainly there for entry level. But that's new market. If you look at Marketplace or eBay or any other third party that sells secondhand equipment online, Reverb, there are probably more brands selling their secondhand in the same price range as Behringer that people are buying as entry-level synths, or they're getting cash, or they're bartering or trading or swapping with their mates to try out that bit of kit. And the first synth that I played with as a kid was a Roland, an old analog Roland, and I could never afford it, but I borrowed it off my friend's brother's band. I didn't even pay for it. So I don't think it's class at all. I don't think it has anything to do with class. It's more like a quadruple bottom line issue for the business. If they're not socially responsible or ethically responsible, then they claim that as a legal issue that would be taken up with them in a lawsuit, but they're meeting their objectives for their price positioning in the market. So they have their business model. They're not going to give any support. They don't want to buy quality components that last more than 10 years. That is their decision to make a profit. Now, from a technical perspective, I have a completely different view. I don't think there's any originality in what they do, but you've got to say something for their ability to replicate the Model D was actually technically good work. It may not be perfect. It may not be exactly the same, but they did a pretty good job. Is there any originality in the design? Hell no. That was not what they were focused on. Let's talk about the Deep Mind for a second. It's based on the Roland 106. What did they do with it? They doubled the number of voices. They added more modulation. They embedded TC components and filters and effects. Actually, I think they did a pretty good job. I don't own one, but from a lot of the reviews that I've seen, people like them. Now, the fact that there's a lot of them being sold online, maybe it's because they still don't have very good support, right? Or they start to fall apart. So from a technical perspective, I think I'm more interested in where they're headed in the future because they're bringing more capable synthesis into that more affordable range. I think that's a good thing. Are they helping their consumers buying new? No. Does anyone want to buy a second-hand Behringer piece of equipment? Hell no. There's no guarantee that it's going to survive shipping. That's a big issue, right? Unless it's been built in the 80s and it's made out of metal, like the FCB. So I think that the business sense is there. They would argue that there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. And if they do have an issue, take it up with them legally. I think the consumer has got so many options in the secondhand market with good quality equipment that was built to last. There is no class issue. And I think technically Behringer is probably starting to get things right. But does anyone want to trust them to buy their kit new or used? I kind of doubt it. That's just my opinion.
Thank you very much. One big thing I had here is, would you buy Behringer secondhand based on all of the stuff you know? But we'll get to that one. Vince, I'm wanting to know what's on your mind right now.
You talk about class issue in the Behringer products versus higher end things, and it makes me think about class in the class issue in the music scene in general, more than just synths and Behringer and other products Behringer makes. It's not just about any specific product or any specific genre of music. There's an overall by larger artists mostly. They stay loyal to certain brands, and I feel like a lot of that is less because of the class they're in, and a little more because they get marketing deals. And then with independent musicians, when it's an issue with class, I feel like that's just a shitty stance to have. To think that you made your music with cheaper gear, so it's not as good as somebody else's that spent more money. And the other thing about that is that in the industrial community specifically, I feel like a lot of us are more impressed when you make the music with cheap gear. Because there's an art to making that work. And that's coming from a person who's disabled, so maybe it's a little self-serving because I have almost no money and I still manage to make music. I'm using barely upgraded versions of the same software I bought in 2006 when I had more money, because I haven't had money since 2013. So it's more and more of a struggle all the time, but as long as I can do it, I don't care how much it costs. Like, I don't care if it's not expensive. I'd like to have the money to spend on better products, but I don't. I can barely afford to find Behringer products used when I'm lucky. Okay, like even their prices have come up just enough since the early 2000s to early 2010s even, that I struggle with affording their gear. So I don't even have the option to buy other gear secondhand, because other gear secondhand is more expensive most of the time than Behringer's new gear. So how's that supposed to work for me? I do try to avoid buying anything new, honestly, Behringer included, because yes, sometimes I can find a really good deal, but I rarely have the money to spend on anything that's actually going to have much longevity unless I'm very careful with it. So I'm mostly just very careful with things. So I've got my small arsenal and it's not going anywhere. But class shouldn't be an issue when it comes to your gear. Like it's what you do with it that matters most, not what you're using.
Right. Thank you. I might need to, after we've had the conversation, I might need to try and clarify what I mean by this. But I'm going to let everybody cycle through what they want to say, and then I want to close this section out because I've got so much egg on my face right now. Alex, Vince, did you want to throw anything else, or can I throw it to Alex? Thank you so much for your thoughts. I really appreciate them. Alex, talk to me.
Well, I think it also raises the question of how much gear do you need, if any, and what, because like there are a group of people who just buy multiple Behringer synths because they want to experience something similar like their heroes did, not necessarily because they have this barrier to entry, but because they want to try these different synthesizers from different manufacturers from different time periods that they heard on records and are nostalgic about. I think if I had no money right now and all my gear was destroyed in a fire, I probably would try to get something that's multi-timbral and then some sort of sequencer, and look for things that is not in fashion right now. I think it's like 90s Rumpler right now. I think you can get really good deals on them. So if you adamant that you don't want to use a computer and a MIDI keyboard, I think that would be the best option at a price. And sometimes if you're really patient, you can get really good deals. And especially if you know how to use a soldering iron.
Thank you. Razi, what are your thoughts?
I feel like Vince and Alex kind of already said this, and I already wrote it down. So with apologies for having taken notes to read. One of the reasons I'm so averse to marketing is because I'm susceptible to it. And I recognize that. And I feel the class mythology in the labels on the gear for sure. And the moralizing around get a real Prophet 5, get a Jupiter 8, not the knockoff, get a 2600 or don't get anything at all, comes from people who got theirs in the early 80s dip when you could get it on a trash heap for $400. So the sort of pithy part is that there's a generational wealth transfer baked into the vintage market. And Behringer, for all the other things that they did, for all the other things that we're talking about, seems to have been one of the inflection points of breaking that gatekeeping. And a kid in Sao Paulo can get a polysynth new, from the shops in a whole different tier that was just pushed so far out of reach for a while there that I don't know why I'm even bothering to say a positive, but there is one.
Okay, thank you. No, I really appreciate this. So when I say class system, I'm talking about the class system that you and I live in, whether you like it or not. For example, there is a dude who is making, I think, $17 an hour in the state of California, which I think is now the minimum wage, and working 4 days a week, and wants to make music, but they want, and also Adapt, you brought up a really nice point measuring off what Alex said is that you don't need any of the shit. You can do amazing music with your shop or with your computer, sure, but they don't want to. They want a synthesizer because all the cool kids they see are using synthesizers and got this room full of bleep blop, and they want that. They can't afford that because unfortunately, this person is probably going to spend the next 30 or 40 years of their life stuck in minimum wage, flipping burgers, cleaning floors, whatever, because they do not have access to healthcare. I'm sorry, to education, and. That is a class system. And increasingly, in the United States, you might think you're middle class, but you're actually lower class. But hey, I've written so many albums about this, I'm not going to bore you with it. What I am saying is that these people, and I am one of them now, if you cannot afford this glorious, shining whatever, Behringer has come to the rescue, and they are supplying a, it's not even entry level anymore, because people who could afford it once can't afford it now. So yeah. And I guess what I am saying is that I have made a decision that when I go to a gig and I see someone's rack full of Behringer or a Behringer keyboard, I don't turn my nose up anymore. And there was a period of time where I, as a musician, would see people looking at my gear, and you could see on their face the disdain if I had certain brands in my modular synthesizer. I have done so many gigs with so many people where I have watched people, and hey, maybe you need to throw yourself a bit. Well, look, a lot of the synth community I don't want to be a part of the synth community too much anymore because they are fucking snobs. And it's great to be a fucking snob, but I cannot project my snobbiness onto another person and make a judgment on the expectation of what they're going to hear. And I guess that's what I'm saying is that I think I'm of the impression that what Behringer is doing is pushing a lot of prices down, because I see companies going, oh shit, we can't compare with Behringer, so therefore we're going to start releasing more affordable options. And I'm seeing it especially in Dopefer. Like I think Dopefer have gone, well, we are going to supply an alternative that might be 20% more expensive, but this is getting into alternatives that we're going to talk about later. So, you know, I guess what I'm saying is, in one point, this is a positivity. I've made absolutely no sense right now, and this is going to turn into an argument. Please go.
I think we are all with you on that you shouldn't judge somebody by the price tag of their gear. And I think I only judge people who only have one Roland or Yamaha stage workstation because it's boring. But other than that, that's a joke. Other than that, I feel like I never felt that someone was lesser because the gear was crappier. But I'm a bit worried that if there's a race to the bottom in price tag, then build quality from all manufacturers suffers, which makes gear as a whole more unreliable, which is like a flip side. I think expensive gear has its place, but it's also great that people have the opportunity to get something more affordable.
Okay, and on this point, I just want to put a pause in that and say the next thing I want to talk about is product quality. And you just tapped on that, so thank you. If you want to jump in more of that, and as I see the hands in the thing, if you want to start responding to Karl and also talk about product quality, we can sort of snake this into product quality. Alex, did you want to mention anything more about product quality, or do I throw it to the Ivanator?
Let Ivan talk.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate what you said. Ivan, go.
Okay, we bring up, particularly young people being broke as hell, and trying to make music. And, I can definitely speak to that because, back in the 80s when, supposedly like there was this renaissance of or glorious time of analog gear getting so cheap you could just buy it. Um, I gotta disagree. I mean, if you were a broke kid back in that era and you wanted to buy a used piece of analog gear, those were still really expensive when you were making a nickel 98. I remember, Jupiter being available and it was like, it was a couple $100, yes. But I wasn't making even $100 a week. And I was living on it as well. If I wanted to save up for that used gear, it was going to take 6, 8, 9 months of just not eating food to get there. And I remember vividly in Chicago one day calculating how long it was going to take to buy a new M1 when the M1 was new, and that was measured in years, before I had any hope. And yeah, at that point I was just like, well, screw it, I'm out. You know, this is the end for me. This will never happen. And I like the idea that we're now living in a world where, you know, maybe you can get a little closer. It still sucks. Nobody's gonna, say that it doesn't because it most certainly does. But it has gotten actually significantly better than it was back in the day because it was really, really not as easy as people think it was. And it's only because we now make, like we're getting paid, way more than we were back then. And, that makes those numbers back then look really, really nice. But they weren't nice back then. They were hard. Also, here in the Midwest, the used gear just didn't exist.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Uh, and of course, while you were saving up for that M1, the T1 came out, and then the M1's value dropped. Rob, talk to me.
Yeah, on snobbery and quality, I think there's more discussion to be had about hardware versus virtual instruments. If you really think about it, I mean, that's when you talk about affordability and quality. I can buy a modular V for $50.
And I thank you for that because Vulture Culture did a really good thing. By the way, everybody in the chat, could you see my face when you do? And you were really great. He did a really good thing on the virtual versus hardware, and this is a great conversation for another time because I would love to. Hey, let's talk about what Vulture Culture was talking about, but that's unfortunately not today. So please write that down. But unless you wanted to talk more about product quality of Behringer.
Well, ethics aside and snobbery aside, my mid-range go-to is often Novation. And they don't put a lot of quality components into their builds, but they are their own design. They're versatile, they work really well with the DAW, and they're pretty good. I mean, and for what you get as a synthesizer, the X Station series of synths secondhand, they're actually pretty good. I'd pit them against a lot of the high-end Behringer any day, and they're probably even cheaper than Behringer. And if you think about other hardware quality, like who's got a Line 6? Line 6 have come a long way. They were super cheap, low quality, and now they're sort of coming up in the market as well as more formidable for pedals and amps and everything.
Can I ask you, do you think Behringer's quality is going to get better?
It's going to be tough because if they're still building analog circuits like in DeepMind, to get the analog quality, then there's decent engineering going into that effort, but they're still finding ways to cut corners on cost. Is that the chassis? Is it the buttonology? I don't have a deep mind, so I don't know the answer, but I would be interested in comparing the ARP Odyssey made by Korg against Behringer, like pull them apart, open them up as an electronic engineer and say, how have they cut corners? There's the interesting thing between the Behringer and the Korg is Behringer's has more functionality, more features than the original ARP had, and they're only about $50 cheaper. Why is that? So I think it may be the country that they're manufactured in. Maybe Korg is manufacturing in Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and maybe Behringer is manufacturing in Vietnam and China. I don't know. Never looked into it. But there's a very close cost point for the ARP Odyssey as a kind of a test. And I think the engineering quality, they're capable of it. They just choose not to in the full solution, in the full product, including support, in order to keep the price down, which is a smart business move.
Thank you. I do know for a fact that some of the modular stuff, they put them out in batches and then they wait for feedback. And then they may improve on them. And I know for a fact the Roland copy VCOs, the second batch, which I got, is way better than the first batch because the public outcry was, this is shit. And so that the second batch was better. So it's really interesting what you're saying. Can I throw this to Rezi? Thank you. Rezi, what are your thoughts on the product quality of Behringer?
You were talking about the sort of snobbery effect a minute ago, and I wanted to just jump off that slightly on the couple of like similar inflection points that happened. I had that feeling about Epiphone labeled stuff, when Gibson owned it. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but on the guitar front, that was a real brand that Gibson bought and turned into the budget kind. So you didn't have the same cachet. If your headstock said Gibson, that was the thing. And then they became really expensive. And the same CEO problem with Behringer kind of happened with them. And personal story, when Gibson bought Opcode, my sequencer went away and I was very mad that they killed Studio Vision Pro. And that is when I kind of started getting over the stigma of Epiphone versus Gibson in a way. And now most of my headstocks actually say Epiphone. And similarly with some of the positioning that Schecter had as a guitar manufacturer. The one Schecter that I bought new was very inexpensive, and the fit and finish is flawless. It's a beautiful instrument. It's well made. It's came practically in tune out of the box. And, when I had questions for the support, they were happy to weigh in with personal, support. It's elevated the brand in my eyes past that stigma of the snobbery. And I've also been trying to get over it. And those are a couple of ways over the past 20, 30 years, that I've had with guitar brands, at least, experiences changing my label friction a little bit.
That's fascinating. Wouldn't it be interesting if Behringer bought out another brand that was more high end, but nobody knew? Why am I even fucking talking?
Are we talking,
right now?
what is it, Clark Technic or
well, they've bought
Midas?
So many fucking brands anyway.
Right.
Anyway, but thank you both, Rob, and I was about to call you Shirley, Rezi.
Wait, am I Shirley?
No, I just from where you were, your name, but I know.
Fair enough.
Shut up now, Alex. Help me out. I'm talking myself into a deep dark hole.
So apart from my personal experience with this first MIDI keyboard, which was like utter crap, I think
I'd love to hear about your personal experience.
Well, it was really, it was a MIDI keyboard in a plastic enclosure, which is fine by me usually, but the thing cracked like crazy when you played. So it was louder than your music, which was distracting. And as I said, it had like hung notes, and sometimes notes just wouldn't trigger, which like ruined takes for me, which was like the most infuriating experience I had with music gear. So that was it. I think since then their keyboards have become more reliable, so I got like the shorter end of the stick. I think the first batch of DeepMinds had some issues. I heard through the grapevine, but I never owned one myself. And I think since then they have become gradually better, but I still hear something like the knobs on the 303 clones starting to crackle after a year. So I think you still have like issues here and there. If you are fine with the soldering iron and can recalibrate oscillator tunings, it's probably a lesser problem than if you don't have these skills.
Thank you. And that also ties into concepts of longevity, which Rob, feel free to when you're done spieling, talk about longevity if you want.
Yeah. The funny thing is I don't think there's any brands not having issues with products in the
Agreed.
last 10 years, right? Doesn't matter which one you look at. Like, I got a Korg Wave State, and that was one of the ones that I bought. Did I buy it new? I kind of bought it new because it was a demo version from a store, slightly used. And it's got some issues. Like it's got some software glitching when it's trying to write presets, saving your own software. And the features that it's packed full of and the ability to go and update it is awesome. But there's some little bugs in there which kind of gets you a little frustrated with it. And the build quality is, I think it's all of the components are good quality, but the overall chassis is very light. And, if you were to drop it a foot off the ground, I'm sure the entire case would shatter into dozens of pieces. And that kind of ilks me a little bit as well. It's like, I've got to really use kid gloves with using this thing because it sounds phenomenal, but it's so delicate. And I'm afraid to open it up. I would never open it up because I'm sure I would just break it. But that's not the only one. There's so many other companies that are struggling these days with their quality control because of let's call it the COVID home studio snowball industry has caused all of these companies to probably triple in their revenue in the last 5 years. And it's put an immense pressure on them, particularly because of so many DAWs and VSTs being released. The hardware companies are probably up against the wall. They're probably struggling to keep selling good quality synths. And I think there's something to be said about that because, who's the Norwegian guy who likes to be annoyed about the internals of every synth are now just being a computer module.
Yeah, that dude.
And yeah, it's funny because everyone will gravitate towards higher integrated components because they're lower cost, they're common use across industry, they're easy to program. You can get a college graduate to write the software now. You can get an AI to write the software now. So, the race is on. How much further can these OEMs of these original equipment manufacturers go to stay viable in the hardware industry? Be interesting to see what the hardware industry looks like in 10 years. And I think there might be a migration back to prototype stuff like the Blaster Beam. People might want to see more crazy instruments that aren't mass manufactured because they want to be different and they want to have a different sound. They don't want to sound exactly the same as a million other musicians.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. There's some really good points being brought up today. And I apologize, I'm very caffeinated and I blame the coffee. isn't it really interesting? Like I've always questioned, is it the market that drives the consumers or the consumers that drive the market? And that applies to absolutely anything, everything. Also, as we've been talking and bitching about Behringer, I've been going, you know what? I've had the same problem with Moog. The only one brand I have had no problems with is Dopefa. And I had problems with Dopefa because I did something dumb. I plugged it in wrong. And also make noise. We're talking about the product quality and also the longevity. I don't have any faith at all in Behringer longevity. I honestly do not believe a lot of Behringer is going to be around in 5 or 10 years, based on my own personal experience with it. And if I took it out on a tour like I do with my Dopefa stuff, I just have a funny suspicion it wouldn't last. Good thing about it, though, is that if it fucked up, I could get a new Behringer module in almost any fucking city in the United States or Europe. Maybe not so much with the Dopefa stuff. And then it's a really interesting thing of, well, do you therefore take out, instead of taking out your beautiful, precious Mini Moog, do you take out a Model D instead? Knowing that that's a $200 synth versus a $4,000 or $5,000 synth. That goes into the, do the audience even know, which is touching on what you were touching on, Rob, about software versus blah, 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 blah. I don't know. But in answer to the question that we are talking about right now, the product quality of, I don't think it's all that good. And I don't think it's built to last. And there is something that I will close out with. That's my thoughts on productivity, on the product quality and the longevity. And it's also really important that, you know, going back to the moral issue is that although I cannot afford to be investing in stuff, I think it is important for me to try and get gear from some boutique group in fucking Long Beach like Noise Engineering. And those guys are literally running out of their garage. And I think, therefore, it is important that I could be getting a Behringer thing for like $100, one of their effects units, but instead I have made the choice to spend $400 with these bunch of kids in Long Beach, in Los Angeles, to keep this boutique industry going. And I think it's important because when we lose the edge of the sword, oh, that's a terrible analogy, the edge of inventiveness, we're going to have a flow out issue across so many different things. And, you know, there are shops who I will not mention who refuse to sell Behringer. Quite well-known shops, actually, but because of market pressure, they're now selling Behringer. So it's such an interesting conundrum, I think. But the longevity is not good, and I would not buy one. I would not buy Behringer secondhand on Reverb. Fuck no. Dopefa? Oh, yes, I would. Sequential? Oh, yes, I would. Make Noise, Noise Engineering, even CMS. Yes, 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 yes. Not Dopefa. I mean, sorry, not Behringer. Dopefa, yes. Behringer, no. I'm going to shut up now. Rezi, talk to me.
Yeah, it's hard to find somebody who'll do component level work on a solid box that's potted with epoxy, and you can't access the actual IC labels because they painted black over them, and it's like a solid bar of hot melt glue. But you can replace it, and that is something I've done the math on a bunch of times now and been guilty of. I could get 5 of these cheap ass versions of a thing, or one, of the expensive version, and I'll just keep replacing it. And if I only have to replace it twice, hey, maybe 3 times, I'm still ahead, and I didn't spend as much as I did on the expensive version. And that, it's kind of the AliExpress way of thinking. And the ethical component to that is certainly the externalized costs of waste. I'm throwing these things out, I'm contributing to the trash pile, and these are going back to countries and classes that are the most affected and vulnerable by that kind of waste and that kind of externalized cost. Guilt in that ethical decision for sure. And I like to be provoked into having to at least consider that, buying some of these boutique brands where you're paying more for a thing that supports a local community of people. I think that's really cool. And I would love to, if anybody, has more favorite brands where the person answers the email, then, it's great to hear that we're supporting them and interacting with them and being the community that does that. Reduce, reuse, recycle, support community, local action. Everything's low. Everything in politics is local kind of concept.
Thank you very much. Alex, what do you think?
I think at least the Model D I've seen on some stages, and I haven't heard from many people that they crap out as they are, especially if you keep them in the rack. But what I'm more concerned is how many insertions do the plugs survive, and how scratchy, how fast do the potentiometers get scratchy. And also, it's a different conversation if it's on tour or maybe something you carry to the rehearsal space versus something that stays in your studio.
Thank you. I'll answer that really quickly. My experience with the knobs isn't good, but that's based on the mixing desks, and I did take them live. Actually, one of them I didn't take live, and a can of the fucking spray fixed that shit. Did you want to add to that, or can I throw this to the amazing Rob? Thank you, Alex. Rob.
Yeah, just to kind of demystify what we mean by longevity, there's supportability and maintainability. Supportability is where the OEM doesn't want to give you any support anymore for any reason, whether it's software or warranty or technical support or updating software drivers or giving you some alternative patch or updates. That's the supportability part. The maintainability is about the survivability of the components, and that's all based on what components the designers have selected. And when we talk about the potentiometers or pots and the sliders, you can have tin-plated ones which will attract a lot of corrosion from high humidity or salty air or whatever the case may be, versus gold, which has a better signal performance for conduction. And so obviously gold is more expensive than tin, and gold will naturally survive better in electronics than tin. But on the flip side, if you've got an integrated circuit with all of that electronics built into the chip, that is actually more robust than the old analog circuit boards, which have issues with capacitors and filaments and board cracking and strain. And the flip side of that is, well, those old analogs were in steel and wood chassis. So if you did bump it or knock it, the internals didn't get damaged. We're now into the 80s with digital technology. There's an increase in the number of plastic housings, which do get smashed and cause damage internally and break liquid crystal displays that the analogs never had to worry about. And then the power supplies deteriorate. They become less efficient over time. The longer you run them, the more heat they generate and the more noisy they get.
And they vibrate themselves to death physically.
Yeah, that actually kills your synthesizer as well, because it's inducing a lot of noise, inducting a lot of noise into the electronics. So the big issue there is modern technology is designed more for throwaway. So if a circuit board does have a fault, it's so complex. They take the board out, they throw it away, and they put in a new one. That's the new tech, right? The downside is there's a lot of companies that are still using low-cost interfaces like knobs and dials and sliders, which if they choose the low-cost version, it will not last. It's that simple. And there's very little fixing except replacing and throwing away. So that's really the physics of the electronics side of maintainability and supportability. Those are big concerns in any industry.
That's gold. That's gold. Thank you, Rob. That's fucking gold. Wow, I think that rant just knocked hit the nail on the hammer on the head. Nail on the head, hammer on the nail. You know what I'm talking about. Fucking great rant, man. Thank you very much. Ivan, hit me.
I think you're still muted there, pal.
Yeah, there's a whole like price performance and survivability and roadability, equation that all this has to be dumped into. Like if I found myself, suddenly needing to tour and take a Pro One with me, you got a choice. You either take an actual Pro One with you on the road, or you take the Behringer Pro One. Behringer Pro One's going to win. Yeah, because keeping a Pro One, vintage Pro One up and running on the road is you're asking for it. You're gonna get yourself in trouble. Behringer Pro One, they're cheap and easy to replace. And you can find them, easily wherever you're going. So you get to, choose one pain in the ass over the other. If I had a choice between, taking the Alita out on the road or use a backing track to replace it, backing track wins because the Alita is never leaving the studio.
Fair enough. Thank you. Rezi, what are your thoughts? And then I'm gonna bend into something else.
Ivan brought up an interesting point of like, there's like this middle class, I guess, of musicianship where what synth you're choosing actually makes a difference because the durability thing. Whereas in the upper echelons, you're just replaceable controllers and you streamline your rig and everything's in the rack and you've got two of them anyway. And one of them's flying to New York while the other one's going to Chicago. That these concerns are not of the, life or touring class. They're more of the, I've got a gig, a month of club tours lined up and I need to actually play the instrument that's in front of me, which is probably the bulk of what people use these things for. I don't know what the numbers really look like, but it's an interesting balance where some of the super rock star echelon performers, it doesn't matter to, and some of the more susceptible middle class and speaking of class, people who have the thing that they're playing in front of them and need it to work 2 nights in a row are a very different bunch of needs.
Thank you. This is really excellent because once again, I'm really being challenged by what you guys are saying and what people are, what everybody's saying in the comments, and I'm really grateful for this. I want to say 2 things. Don't bother commenting on them because who gives a shit? I mean, I give a shit, but this is just Karl shooting his mouth off. We were brought up about home musicians versus pro musicians. I don't think we have time to go into that because I really want to focus on cheap alternatives. But I have a question for you to think about, not necessarily say, put it in the comments. If you hired a pro studio and you walked in and it was full of Behringer, how would you feel? So you're paying big money for a studio and it's full of Behringer when you walk in there. How do you feel? And that's interesting because you're not taking into consideration how it's going to be used, but this stuff. But Alex, I'm not actually going to take that one. It's just a thought thing because I want to talk about cheap alternatives. Secondly, Karl's ever so famous car analogy is that if you took a 1974 Charger car, beautiful fucking car, and the airbags and seatbelts are made all by the same company. So you're going to get a Charger that's now made by Moog. You're going to say to Moog, based on what you know of Moog, we want you to build us a Charger, 74 Charger. Will you as the driver take it over 60 miles an hour? Okay. Although with Moog, it probably was made in 1974, and you bet your fucking ass I'm taking that thing over 70 miles an hour. Secondly, you do the same thing with sequential, then you do it with Oberheim. Yep, and Roland and Yamaha. Yeah, I'm taking those guys over 70 for sure. But now you get one, you get Dopefer to make one. It would be more streamlined and it would be, but yeah, I'll take that fast. What about Make Noise? What about, where this is going? Now you're going to ask Behringer to make a 1974 Charger. Incidentally, they also make the seat belts and the airbag too. Will you take it over 60 miles an hour? Think about it. And it's also interesting because it's not just a question of what it actually is. It's a question of what you've been told that it is. And that's what's so fascinating that I've learned today is that, this one, it's great. Rock solid. This one, crap. This one, it's okay. This one, you might want to buy 2 or 3 copies of it. This one, don't touch it. And they're all made by Behringer. Fascinating. So the last thing I want to talk about, really want to hear your guys' thoughts. Rob brought up Novation as a cheap alternative. I pushed Dopefer hard as a cheap alternative. Talk to me about what is a cheap alternative to Behringer. Go.
The search by price on Amazon, and there'll be a just slew of Chinese ad hoc brand names that don't necessarily carry consistency. They're just like one-offs and stuff, or factory knockoffs. They're probably the same gear, or maybe they're factory rejects, or maybe they have a couple of cheaper components. But oh my God, I'm stepping in the externalized costs ethical quandary there. But there's an alternative. There's, I think, a couple months ago we mentioned the little Amazon branded compressor pedal that I bought for my guitar. That's quite nice and quite solid, and I've enjoyed so far. So no brand, but you won't be able to pronounce it because it's not an actual word on an Amazon or AliExpress search.
And thank you. Because what is it? Actually, Alex, tell me your thoughts.
It really depends on what you're looking for, because if you're looking for something to make music, I think one monosynth might not be the right first thing to get. I would get an affordable roof box. If it has to be new, I think the Electron ones are quite affordable and capable for the price. I think they're like $300. Then of course innovation, and if you can, I would just say get the first circuit use, because I've seen them for like 200 euros. And if you attach a MIDI keyboard to that, you get like 2 different patches of a digital synthesizer with a sample-based drum machine, and you can make whole tracks on it. If it has to be an analog monosynth, I think Behringer is really hard to beat if it's supposed to be new. But used, I think you can get some deals from other manufacturers if you're patient, and maybe wait for those times of the year when people don't have much money and want to sell stuff, because then usually you get for the best price.
Thank you. And it's a bit of a, oh no, Ivan, you've got one. I did want to push Rob a bit more on the Korg ARP stuff versus the Behringer ARP stuff, because hey, I was looking at a 2600, who isn't, and I did a lot of research on the differences between the Korg and the Behringer. But I know, Ivan, you've got one, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Razi, talk to me, and then I'm going to.
I think to complete the ethical versus affordable debate, there are no shortage of kits. And I think Alex touched on this. You said soldering iron at least 3 times. So I'm going to assume this is, if not exactly where you were going, part of it. But there's 500 series, there's Eurorack modular, there's desktop versions, there's processing gear, there's everything from Adafruit to some boutique brands that you can buy the component kits with instructions, get it much more cheaply, and be part of the process that created the thing. Soldering's not that hard, but it is a skill that you will develop as you create the thing. Maybe you're going to bake it in your toaster oven and ruin your mom's toaster. I don't know how you're going to do it, but cool way of getting your hands on what might be an affordable boutique 1176 optical compressor, and you get a box and some components instead for, you know, a fifth of the price, and put some elbow grease into it and have fun and make a YouTube video or TikTok.
Awesome. Alex, what are your thoughts? Ivan, why isn't your fucking hand up talking about your fucking bloody Ivan? I mean, Alex.
I get what you're saying, Resi, but I think if you don't have much money, you usually don't have much time, which is not always the case. But if you're busy, I think I would not go for kits as the first thing. And also, not everybody who wants to make music also wants to solder. I get it. I tried it. It's fun. But sometimes you make a mistake and then your investment is gone because you ruined the board, which happened to me.
You definitely have to buy into that as part of the challenge and fun. Thank you for the comment. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I've always wanted to make stuff, but I end up making smoke machines. I'm going to put a link down here to LB Designs. This is Cat Girl synthesizers. I mentioned this in the chat after we did the Zoom last week. So LB Designs, if you're into building stuff, they've got a whole bunch of components, and a lot of that you will notice are the beginnings of maths and all of this other stuff that is now everywhere. This is Cat Girl Synthesis, which I believe is actually Australian, I think. And 20, 30 years ago, when there was just dope for analog systems and analog solutions, people's rigs were full of this shit that they were DIYing, and also Paia, who also make DIY synths. I'm just gonna fucking shoot my mouth off. Firstly, the best alternative in modular world is Dopefer. I cannot speak highly enough of Dopefer. The only thing they do that's garbage is their 120 filter.
Oh, filter.
Amazing.
We lost you for a second there, Karl. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, thanks. Dope is dope. And welcome Suffer.exe. They have a lot of copies or clones of Wasp, of VSC3s, of Buchla stuff as well. And they're very affordable, like Brick Dunnies. They're built so well. Also, Ulteria, as far as controllers go, I think they're great. And you know, they're not that, when you look at the price breakdown, they're not that bad, and the functionality is brilliant, well made. Another company is called Life After Audio. That's they're also modular. As far as synthesizers, I really don't know. Just because I don't know. I was really hoping on a spiel in the last 11 minutes of this. Alex, talk to me.
Sorry, Peanuts. If you find a good deal on a used iPad, which has an headphone output, you can get a dongle where you can connect a MIDI port, a MIDI controller to it, and load some synthesizer apps. And I feel-wise, this comes really close to using a hardware synthesizer, more than connecting it to a computer. For some reason, I don't know. Theoretically, it should just be a computer, but it feels more like a hardware synth for me.
And that's a great idea as well. Because a lot of the new modular stuff are, there's a lot of digital circuitry in them anyway, or digital stuff. And echoing the bald, angry guy, you know, your iPad's probably a better processor, but now I don't actually know. Incidentally, Behringer do make a really handy little thing that converts iPhone or iPad into modular. So 2 ins, 2 outs, it's digital. And so you can have I'm sure other companies do it as well. So you can have, you said, a reverb or something on that phone that you've got that you don't use anymore, or the iPad you don't use anymore. Put a tape delay, a big reverb, something on that, and it's a set-alone thing, and it's hooked in there, and boom, boom. I did buy one of them because I didn't want to buy a fucking tape machine, but we'll see if that works. Does anybody else want to? And I thank everyone for putting up with this and putting up with my bullshit on this. This has been really helpful. Finally, Ivan.
Making
8
everybody
minutes.
wait. So I've been kind of going down this rabbit hole because I'm thinking about putting analog compressors on the master bus while I'm doing my mastering so that I can get a little bit more analog warmth into the mix. And I was it Art Pro they're making analog compressors for dirt cheap using dirt cheap Chinese components. But I think it's Art that does that has this ability. You can swap out the the tube that does most of the like heavy lifting with a German made tube, and like the quality of the sound apparently just goes through the roof. And so you've got the ability to then do something that high-end gear does with very low-end gear, which is handy.
Very handy indeed, and I thank you. Oh boy. Foolishly, I clicked on that damn link Resi sent me. Oh,
I'm trying to keep that to like people you could get on the email when because their company is them kind of sized.
yeah.
Examples.
Erica are great like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, does anybody have any last thoughts? Because I've really grateful for everybody's bloody shit, and also adapt that bloody thing that the DIY kits that Resi posted in there is just dope. If anybody has any last minute bloody thoughts about this, please shoot your mouth off. Otherwise, we're out of here.
I think I'm about to move my experimenting with parts over into music again. I took a little break on the stuff that I was building, but this has been a good inspiration moment. I did a bunch of stuff with LEDs and control systems and switches and stuff over the past few weeks that took me away from it. But the things in my drawer and things that we just linked to are very exciting, affordable, and unless Alex is going to come over here and tell me I should be making music instead of building musical instruments, could be. You gotta have some leisure time. I don't know. It's a hobby. Fuck.
Yeah, I think it's important to, like, if you can. I mean, I just need to learn how to do it, but it's a fun thing to get in.
One thing that comes up, and these are solder kits, but there are so many interesting little lever lock and screw terminal and Molex connectors these days that are just crimp and no solder, that a lot of these things are probably, anyway, possibilities.
Alex,
Wago.
what are your thoughts?
I wasn't saying that you shouldn't do this. I said, while I was soldering, I thought to myself, wow, I'd rather make music right now.
You're allowed to your opinion. I'm not
fun.
I'm not going to call you
Just
out every
about
time I
mess.
turn the microphone on or anything.
I'm sort of with you on this one. That because it doesn't work, and I have this drive, like, I want to experiment with electronics. And then I'm going, why am I doing this? Why am I making music?
I know what I'm
but
up
anyway,
against when I talk about this stuff here. I know.
No, it's all your thoughts on this are very welcome. Like, they really are, because, like, come on, man, Rob builds this stuff. Like, Ivan builds these.
I didn't get to thank Rob specifically for his insider opinions on how a lot of the component selection and engineering works in the industry, but he does have great insights. And thank you for that, Rob, if you're watching or listening.
Well, that's why Verona Synths, why they're such sought after, because they meticulously test every single component. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't go in. It's fucking crazy. Anyway, This has been The Art of Rock, and thank you so much for joining us. Today was bloody awesome. We're here every Saturday, so please follow the Twitch and the all that shit. Angelspit's Patreon keeps me going. So if you want to throw $3 or join for free, it's up to you. Ice Planet 9000's album is pre-sailing. It goes live very soon. Patreon members getting you a free copy. New Angelspit's coming along, and it's very vicious, and I'm very happy about that. We're all going to be hanging out on Wednesday night with Vulture Culture, and it's just great. Just join it. Rezi, thank you for joining this. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you. Josie says hi.
Big
There
hi,
she goes.
Josie. And also thank you to everybody who jumped in and was part of this madness. I'm very grateful, and I'm very grateful that you put up with my rants and everything else. We are streaming. We're going to raid to MTV TV. So if you're watching on YouTube or fucking Facebook, bang on over, because that's where we're going. We're going over to MTV TV. Happy birthday again, Adam. And remember, if you've got a video and you want to play it, it's there. So let's get that raid happening, and we're gonna hang back here and talk. Yeah, we are. We're gonna be okay. It's gonna be. I really enjoyed today. Thank you. Thank you very much. And if you get a chance, watch the bloody Alex at Vulture Culture did a video about does hardware matter, which Rob touched on, and I want to talk about it more because it's such a great bloody thing. Does hardware really matter? Always, it's really interesting. It comes down to you and your perspective, as opposed to, you know, that's what I reckon. Anyway, how's that raid going?
I'd tell you, but I'm in the middle of an ad.
And you're also in the middle of a tale. In the middle of a tale. Anyway, I'm going to assume the rains happen. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. You bloody rock. And